Hello, how are you? I'm Matthew, and this is Truth from the Booth on Phoked Up Radio. Thanks for carving out a little space for me and for my guest. It's another Olympic Sunday, and I'll be honest, I've been logging 9-10 hours a day glued to the games. A much-needed and appreciated distraction. Go Canada, go. But here's the thing. While we're counting medals, Nova Scotia is still counting tents, and I can't mute that. The stories of the unhoused across this province don't pause for prime time. That's why this program exists. That's why there's a mic open today. So we're pressing pause on the podiums and bringing you something heavier, a conversation with Amanda Pearce. Amanda and I first connected in January 2024, a Facebook message about a missing contact. Life moved, 2 years passed. We met face-to-face while filming a documentary with Feed the Pigeons Films last Sunday. That's when we decided, let's talk, for real. This is a lengthy and revealing conversation. We dig into where Amanda is today and the 9 months spent living at a ball field in Sackville. 9 months in Nova Scotia, a place that can freeze you solid. This isn't a one-up conversation. It's the start of Amanda's journey here on Truth from the Booth and my live streaming show, In the Moment. No anthem, no medal ceremony, just the truth. Our conversation begins now. First off, I don't make any secrets. It's a beautiful Friday the 13th, as I look out the window here, looking at the Halifax Harbor, looking south towards the beautiful city of Halifax, Nova Scotia. And joining me on the line is Amanda Pearce. Amanda, how are you?
I'm good. How are you today?
I'm okay. So we're going to get into a lengthy conversation. We just had a lengthy conversation before I hit record. I like to ask my guest before we get into the conversation, if you can, and you can just give me a number on a scale of 1 to 10, where is your mental wellness this weekend?
My mental wellness is up and all over the place, so it's between a 7.5 and 8.
Well, that's a fairly decent number, is it not?
Oh, it's absolutely a great number. At times during the day, the past 3 days, it's gone up to like almost a 10, but over some overwhelming times,
yes,
it's kind of gone down a little bit, but it's a fluctuating matter.
Yeah, we have been sharing lots of messages back and forth in Messenger getting ready for this conversation, and I can say just by looking at those messages that it's been a roller coaster of emotions the last week or so. We're going to have a great conversation. Again, I use this program to educate the audience, and I appreciate everyone that is listening in one of the 162 countries, really big in Holland, and speaking with Amanda Pearce. Just her experience living outside and bringing those stories to you just to make you a little more aware of what's happening right here in our backyard in Halifax, Nova Scotia. So let's start off with the most current thing, even though the show is airing on a Sunday. Like I said, this is a Friday morning conversation, a big day for you. You are moving again.
I am.
Can you tell us where you're moving and what's going on with that, Amanda?
After so long of being unhoused and not living on my own for a long time, I finally met this really kind woman who showed me a place, and she had made it possible for me to be able to sign a lease today. So I will no longer be unhoused soon.
What would you say your definition of unhoused is?
My definition? Nobody's so when people put out that, a person is homeless, we're not homeless, we're houseless. And the definition, I can't really express what I would feel in a definition except for somebody who is struggling, that doesn't have a safe place to be, doesn't have a house. You live outside in multiple elements where you don't know if you're going to be sleeping in a bus shelter one day. You do not know if you're going to be sleeping in a tent. You do not know where your temporary house is going to be. So being unhoused, and a definition of unhoused could be a multiple of things.
In one of the messages that you sent me, this is you signing this lease and getting into your own space. This is the first time since between 2013 2017 that you've had your own space. So from 2017 until now, temporary housing has been a regular part of your life. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's been a large part of my life.
And what are some of the frustrations that come with always being on a temporary housing list, per se?
Well, you constantly have to move. You do not know who you're moving in with. So, like, I've been in rooms. So, like, 2017, whenever I moved out of that place I was in for the longest time, I've definitely been in rooms. And then I did get my own space. And then I had a lot of problems with natural causes and such. And then shifting around because of that was a little bit difficult. But then when we hit 2020, the skyrocket in rent was absolutely out of the world, making it even more difficult. So going from like a $885 rent to a $1,500 immediately was a little bit out of the ballpark for me. And then after that, it was just temporary spaces with more natural cause problems, more rooms, and then eventually outdoors.
Can you give me a time frame when you say temporary housing? Can you give me an example of the shortest time you've been in a place and the longest time you've been in a place that is temporary housing? And I'm wondering about your belongings. What happens to your belongings as you are being bounced around from property to property?
At the shortest time, so like I can actually say that like throughout my entire life, housing stability has been a problem. So I can think of many short times, which are a couple of months, although I'd like to say getting older, like it was more or less like about a year was about my shortest time. Especially in the past few years, a year has been my shortest time. And it seemed to have been I was in a place for a year multiple times, but it just wasn't fully stabilized. It could have been in a room, right, and or in a place I didn't really want to be. And then the longest time of being housed was that 2013 to 2017 place. And after that, I think there was another place that was 2.5, 3 years. And that was the place that went from the 885 to the 1,500. After that, it just hasn't been very stabilizing. And the whole time I have been on a housing list. I started a housing list in 2017, and it was canceled in the past year, which has been utterly frustrating.
Can you talk a little bit about the hotel shelter diversion program that you've been a part of? And was that one of the factors that has got you in a position where you have signed a lease?
The shelter diversion was one of the best things that happened to me. I started in January of 2024 after I left the ball field. When I got into the program, I was extremely small and gray, and really sick. but I was really grateful to take the opportunity.
How did you get on the radar? Sorry, how did you get on the radar for that program?
I called them.
Okay.
One night, I was going through a lot of stuff one night in the ball field, and I had enough. And it had nothing to do with a lot of people in the ball field, but it was more or less with my health. And at the time, I was within an addiction. So I bit the bullet and said I was done. And I got told about this place, and then I reached out. And they had asked if I wanted to leave that day. I did tell them no for that day because it was a sudden situation. I was going to have to pack up my belongings, put it in a storage unit. And I just wasn't ready to say my goodbye that soon. Even though nobody knew I was leaving in the encampment. But I did get to say goodbye in my own ways. Right, I did see multiple people, but when I was leaving, nobody knew that I had left, and I had left in the biggest tears of all history. But I have to say, now I've shifted to 4 different locations throughout the whole process. It's been like baby steps, stepping stones for me. I've made a lot of progress. I've been very serious about it.
No looking back.
No, there is no looking back. I can think of pros and cons per hotel, right? Especially with coming out of the inside from the outdoors, as an addict as well. So I can recall the first hotel being further away, and it kind of kept me more contained, and there's things to do in the hotel while I was going through a withdrawal to help me clean up. That was really great. The second hotel was isolating. And I felt that the staff was really despicable there. They just they wanted you to stay in your room. There was no access to things in the hotel. And even when it came down to asking if I could use the computer in the lobby, to do a college application, they told me I wasn't a guest, which was
wrong,
discouraging. Mm-hmm. So when put in an isolating situation like that, a person is more likely to have a relapse. Mm-hmm. I did get out of that hotel, and the third hotel, I was able to go back to accessing the things in it, like the pool, the kitchen, the gym. They had no problem with me sitting in the lobby and doing artistic things and whatnot. It was actually quite nice, and I continued to thrive with my sobriety. I felt like that was a less struggle, and I feel like that place the most I struggled with was rodents and keeping my food away from them. But you're going to have those situations anywheres. I do know that I also had been able to see my children and my mother a lot while I was in that hotel, which kind of helped me along my journey.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because let's button up this portion of our conversation. And we met in person last weekend and had a great chat. And you were talking about your kids, and we discussed the hurdles that, through policy and regulations and everything else that goes with it, the hurdles that were put in place so that you weren't spending as much time with your kids as you would obviously like. Does this change things with this lease and getting your own place? I would have to suspect that it is, yes?
Well, yes, but no, because through the whole time within the hotel diversion, I have seen my children. Mm-hmm. This being the 4th location that I'm at now, I have seen my children all the time. And the last hotel, actually, if I wasn't suffering with being unhoused myself, so was my children and my mom. And they were actually in that hotel with me. And so I seen them very frequently until they also got housed.
Okay, I think I guess what I was trying to to figure out is, with this lease, will the family be reunited under one roof, I guess? And you don't I'm not trying to pry. I'm just think it would be wonderful if that's what happened.
With my lease coming, I feel like I'm not going very far from the location I'm at now. And I'm just going to see them just as much. And perhaps in the future, it's going to open up other doors with eventually them coming back to living in my environment where there's multiple rooms in a bigger space, clearly. So I expect things to continue shifting.
Baby steps. Just taking baby steps. Okay.
It is baby steps. It is baby steps. It comes with being unhoused and struggling with housing situations. But I would say, like, I see them often. Now I expect to continue just seeing them as much.
Okay, wonderful. That's just fantastic news. Like I'll tell the audience, you and I have been exchanging messages back and forth, so there's a lot more behind the scenes, but what has happened since I saw you last week is just amazing. I'm just really happy for you, Amanda, really happy. Okay, so again, that's probably why your mental wellness number is like 7.5, 8. Let's go back to a time when that number was probably a -8, maybe even worse than that. I'm sure it was. I want to give you an opportunity to tell the audience what it was like for you during the 9 months that you were in a ball field in Sackville, Nova Scotia. And I'll say right now, I've seen plenty of home videos that you have taken, really showing the devastating effects of the elements, the snow, the rain, the wind. And I will be sharing, with permission, some of those videos that will be attached to this radio program on my YouTube channel. So I just want you to give us as much detail about those 9 months. I know you're going to do a fantastic job of painting a picture, but right from the get-go, Amanda, just give us as much or as little as you want. We're not here to pry, and I'm certainly not here to trigger anything, even though last week when we spoke, there were definitely lots of moments with tears in our eyes, because it is a very just tragic situation. So I give the floor to you if you want to tell us about your time in Sackville.
Okay. Would you like me to key in some education while I tell you about this time?
Yes, let's do that. But first, you sent me a video. Tell the people you have the last remaining water bottle from that encampment, and tell me about some of the handmade gifts that you have as memorabilia on your person. Let's start there. Let's start with the good stuff.
Okay. Well, the first thing I'm actually going to start with is by saying that I was never at a -8. Because there was a point in my life that I had hit rock bottom, and it was definitely not in the ball field. So I'm probably going to say in the ball field, I was about a 3 going into that ball field. And I was up and down between 3 and 8, 9 with my mood, depending on what day. It depended on what day it was. I was actually quite happy.
When you say that scenario, I've seen the video footage, and for you to tell me that you were a 3 during that, and saying that you've been worse, I can't even imagine this scenario. That was worse than your time at the encampment. But again, paint the picture. What was going on there?
I don't even know where to start.
Well, let's talk about the water bottle and the keepsakes.
Yeah, the water bottle. The water bottle is one of the most biggest memories that I have. I can't wait to move. It's going on a shelf. I can't believe I still have it. I found it randomly while I was moving from the last location to here, and it's half flat. You can tell it's flat water. And it reminds me of a struggle. It reminds me of a struggle with water in general. And I can recall that being stuck outside in 40-degree weather, 43, 44-degree weather, and you're trying to survive off of 24 bottles of water a week from the city. That water, those whole 24 bottles, was to drink, brush your teeth, wash your hands, keep up with body cleanliness, and wash your dishes and everything. How do you survive off of 24 bottles?
Was that per tent, or was that just like...
That was per tent.
Okay.
Well,
clearly that's not enough water.
No, it's not. So, like, there was a lot of days where you just kind of had to sip on it. You couldn't even gulp it back when you were dehydrated.
What other services did they provide down there? What was the porta potty situation like down there?
The porta potty situation, there was at one point in time 2 porta potties, and as the numbers grew, there was a time where there was one person using one because of multiple health issues, where they couldn't keep their body fluids in, so that porta potty was a mess, and you had 28 of us using the other. Eventually, after speaking with somebody that came down from the city, we did get more porta potties because they had, when I pointed some of those health concerns out, they realized it was a really big health concern to all of us. And we ended up getting 4 more, so equaling up to 6, which was a big help, especially where, like I said, the numbers were growing in the encampment. I also spoke to them about water, too. Eventually, they did understand, not even eventually, they clearly understood that the water was an issue, and they kept bringing more water. So I think we were averaging 2 cases of tent per week, and then we had extras sometimes, which was even better. The porta potty situation was pretty gross and pretty sad.
What was the max number of people there, do you think, at the peak of this?
I think it was in the early 60s.
And just give us a timestamp. Not only when did you show up, but refresh me, when did that encampment become a designated encampment? Or was it even designated? I'm not even sure, Amanda.
I'm not sure when it became a designated encampment. I do know when I showed up, it was a designated encampment at that time.
This is the winter of 2023, is it not? The same time that things are happening at Grand Parade Square?
So I went out, I was in there in May of 2023.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and
one of the originals? Were you like one of the first people there?
When I got there, there was 13 people there. So...
Why there, though? What was the draw there?
I don't know. Like, I felt like I had no choice because I had to leave wherever I was before because of the fires. And then it was just the closest encampment because I was in Fall River when the fires happened. And when I went to the encampment... The day after I went to the encampment, the fire had expanded into my area in Fall River. So I'm pretty fortunate of shifting out when I did.
So you had experience being outside tenting on your own before going to the encampment, yes?
Yes.
And what was the most immediate thing that you noticed going from solidarity into a beehive of just absolute chaos? Because that's how I see him.
When I was on my own, of course I knew that it was going to be isolating, but the one thing I didn't want to struggle with no judgment though, was the thought of going back around addiction because of previous addiction problems like years ago. So that's when I kind of went out by myself. I had a lot of confidence with being out in the woods by myself. But when I shifted and I went into the encampment, I started seeing reality. There was a lot of chaos in general. There was people that were struggling to keep things in their possession without it getting destroyed. I can recall seeing many tents that had tarps that were taped together with duct tape because they couldn't be replaced, or like tents in general being taped with duct tape because they had gotten not destroyed but damaged during the process of being outside. That was a big eye-opener. And the people that were in those tents were wonderful people. No matter what struggle that they were going through, they really helped out. The first day, and I can be teary about this, the first day of stepping into that field, I had shown up with a van load of crap coming from the woods. And there was guys that come out of that gate and just started opening the door right away, and they started taking my stuff out of the vehicle. There was people that laid out pallets immediately, tried to set up my tent, although I'll say, and they'll tell you, and they know that when they started setting up my tent, I was like thankful about it, but I was offended mm-hmm. at the same time, because I know how to set up a tent. You don't have to do it for me, right? If I need something, I'm going to ask you, but they didn't really know that.
Or they could just be like, let's help this individual out here and just see what they're bringing into the encampment so we can steal it later.
No.
You don't think so? No? Okay. Well, I'm glad that could be a scenario. Let's be real.
It could be a scenario. Yeah. It could be. I was pretty cautious about that too, but I have to say, I have actually not had anybody steal from me.
Well, you're one of the lucky ones. Well, like they certainly helped you out. So let's,
did.
peek. There's like 60 people there. Can you give us a snapshot? Who's there? Like, what are some of the ages? Are you seeing couples? Are there young kids there? People with kids? People with pets? Who did you see in the 9 months that you were there, Amanda?
So the one thing I can say first is there was no children there.
Okay, well that's good.
Some people make an assumption, and there was a lot of stuff going online where it was brought up that kids were in that ball field. No, there most definitely was not. It's not a place for a child. The moment you take a child into an encampment is the moment where child services is going to become involved. It's just not the environment. In fact, of anybody who had children that had brought them in there, it was kind of a risk. I had my children not come and stay with me, but they had stopped in for a minute, and I didn't really want them going in the gate. It was more or less outside the gate. But at the time that they had done this, everybody in that encampment was very respectful to my children, which was a blessing. There was other parents in there, not many when I first went in there, but there was a couple. When you're looking at growing numbers, you had a range. There was, I think the oldest was somebody in their 70s. And there's a few people that were older with health concerns. There was a gentleman that came in that was, I believe, deaf and mute. There was another gentleman that was extremely ill with a tumor on the brain that couldn't hold his fluids in.
Did you get a sense of, I think it's important to let people know that there's a variety of reasons why people find themselves unhoused. Those don't seem like any acceptable reason why people like that in those conditions should be walking into an encampment. What were some of the other circumstances that you heard from people as to why they were there?
Rent increase.
Surprise, surprise, right?
Rent increase was huge.
Yes.
And then some of those people ended up in a shelter, and you can only stay in a shelter for a certain amount of time, and then you have to leave for also a certain amount of time. Some people can be long-term, but again, like some other places, they're just first come, first serve. Like there's a lot of different circumstances on shelters. A lot of them just have different rules, and it's really hard to get into one in general. So when you're not being able to actually get into it, you're ending up in an encampment like ours, which was pretty sad. Like remember this older lady walking in. I don't remember how old she was. She was just a older lady, and she walked in with a dog carriage, had 2 dogs in it, and multiple health issues. And I remember a bunch of us trying to help get her on pallets and make a stable flooring on top of the pallets so we could get her an actual bed into her tent so that she wasn't on the floor and such. That lady, I think, ended up finding a place and getting out. She ended up moving in somewhere, so I was pretty happy when she had left. She deserved it. She didn't need to be outside with us.
No one deserves to be outside. No, it's good. Like it's outrageous to see senior citizens outside. I did a story here months ago. An elderly lady, Angelina, I think was her name. We did a live show. They were in their wheelchair in a tent at the Green Road encampment, and within 36 hours, she was in a place.
Amazing.
So I've been lucky enough to have a couple platforms where I've shared stories, and I think there's like 7 people who have shared their stories who are now inside 4 walls. So getting your story out there certainly helps. We'll have more with Amanda Pearce right here on Truth from the Booth on Folked Up Radio. Hang tight. Nova Scotia. Imagine opening your cupboard and there's nothing there. No cereal, no eggs, no dinner waiting. This is the reality for far too many. In March 2025 alone, over 43,000 of our neighbors walked into food banks across this province. That's up more than 10% from last year and nearly 70% since before the pandemic. And listen to this, 24% of people using food banks here are employed, the highest number on record. Work no longer guarantees food on the table. About 1 in 3 of those walking through those doors are children, hungry because prices for groceries, rent, heating, and life keep climbing while incomes stagnate. Nearly 30% of all Nova Scotians report some level of food insecurity, meaning they worry about whether they can eat every single day. This isn't just numbers on a chart. This is families skipping meals, seniors rationing bread, workers choosing bills over dinner. But it doesn't have to be this way. We deserve food security, we deserve dignity, and together we can demand a fairer future. Halifax, Nova Scotia, home of talk radio, Truth from the Booth, an ongoing awareness campaign keeping Canada's housing crisis on the front burner and in the moment right here in the Halifax Regional Municipality, the Maritimes, and beyond. True, real-life stories told by those living it, existing in the streets. They bear all and provide you a brief glimpse into an unimaginable world of misery and disappointment, resilience and triumph. Hear from those with boots on the ground advocating for change now. The stories of the unhoused need to be told by them to educate you, all of us. Hear all the conversations Sundays at 10 a.m. with a repeat at 6 p.m. here on folkedupradio.com. Now, back to today's fantastic guest. I just want to go back to the keepsakes. We talked about the water bottle and how important it is. It's going to have its own shelf, which I think is amazing. You do have some jewelry on you that you've exchanged, received from other people, and a cross that is made out of a pallet. Can you talk about that?
Okay. So while being in the ball field, I was very respected being in there. I think the first thing, one of the first things that I have ever received was actually a bracelet, and it was when the 13 of us were in the encampment at the beginning, and it has a eye on it. I still have that. I don't know how I still have that one with going through all the floods and everything and it not being lost, but I do. I can recall being called Mom, having somebody come up to my tent and saying, I have a gift for you. And they had handed me this necklace. There was two in one. One had a heart on it, just a little gold heart, and the other one had another heart that had Mom on it. And that was one of the best gifts I have ever gotten while being in there. Just when you're being called a mother figure, it's almost like once you get something like that, you have a bunch of children running around in a ball field at all different ages. I can recall getting handmade gifts. There was a girl in there that was really artistic. She was drawing everybody pictures, and she ended up getting her hands on a bunch of ashtrays and put everybody's names on them. And she's a pretty artsy girl, so I received a few things from her. There was keychains. I had received a keychain from another person, a stuffed animal, and from another person. The cross made out of pallets. I actually received that last year, because I am still in contact with a lot of people. And the person that gave it to me, it was theirs. And when they gave it to me, they were like, this gentleman, he made this for me, and he made it out of a pallet. And he said, I really want you to have it. And he had this while he was in the ball field. We lived on pallets, and I thought it was amazing to put something so sentimental to somebody around my neck. It's reminding me of some story that I had gone through, some living situation that I will never forget. And I can think of some other things that I'd received. A carnelian necklace. There's a ring. The ring doesn't come off my finger. That's from a really close friend of mine. I can, in the story, specifically behind the ring, and it's a quite important story to me, is someone had gotten rid of a ring in the ball field, and they had done it out of addiction. And when I was leaving, or before I left, they had asked me if I could get it back. And this thing had ended up in my tent. I told them I would try. And then I told them I couldn't. Although I did, but I wanted to make sure that they were not going to get the ring back and regret getting rid of it again. So I kept it until I knew that they had settled down. I kept it safe. Actually, I kept it on my finger. Last year, I had ended up sitting down with the person and saying, I have to tell you about something. And I said, I still have that ring. And they looked at me and just started crying. And they were like, you're joking. And I pulled it out of a tin case. And I said, I wouldn't give it to you out of fear that you would give it away. And the person looked at me and said that he wanted me to keep it, and it was better on my finger than anyone else's because I deserved that. It hasn't came off. It is almost like a reminder of our friendship because we stuck together in ways while living at the ball field. And I told them, because it's on my ring finger, I told them that I promised it would never come off of that ring finger unless somebody else had replaced it. And this person was like, I just have to leave. They had to leave because they were crying so hard. They just couldn't believe that something like stayed safe.
Well, something that they thought had been lost forever is now
That's right.
had been safely in someone else's possession. I just want to button up this portion here.
Absolutely.
You had said in our conversation last week that you would do it all over again. So I just want the audience, for the record, everything that you went through from, say, May of 2023 to you signing this lease this weekend, you would, I know you've learned a lot, but can I say that you would be comfortable doing it over again if you had to?
If I absolutely had to, I would. Although I kind of hope to stay
yeah, exactly.
under a roof. But I would do it again. My choice of going into certain encampments would be a no-go, and if anything, if I had to do it again, I would probably go either around somebody who could possibly still be unhoused from my encampment, which I would hope to God by then that they would not be, but there's always a chance, or I'd probably go back to the woods because the woods is like my second home in general. That's where I'm more comfortable at, and I do have those survival skills.
Well, let's just put it out there that you're going to ink your name on this document today, and you'll be good to go for a while. And just having to think about being in a tent just does not cross your path again. Let's just talk a little bit about everything that you went through in that time period. You're still getting educated. Can you talk about that, Amanda?
So while being outside in a tent and seeing struggling people going through multiple situations, first it started off with when Posse and Mainline was coming around. Even though I wasn't in active addiction at the time, I had asked for supplies. Because when you have people struggling in an encampment, sometimes they can't, like, they'll be using unsafe supplies until the people come back, like Mainline and stuff. So I had gotten some supplies and I put it in my tent, and I had enough trust in a lot of people there where they had just came to me throughout a period of time when they absolutely was in dire need of some sort of supplies. Eventually, I just started getting the supplies from Posse, and I was just kind of volunteering my own time in general, not through Posse in general, but like volunteering it out there in the encampment.
Okay, so you're not leaving the encampment. They're actually bringing stuff to you, and you're kind of distributing it that way? Okay, all right. Okay.
Yeah, so that started while I was in the encampment.
Okay.
And
well, that shows a level of trust, yes?
Yeah, it was a big level of trust. The supplies that came into my hand was a variety. It could have been a safe drug use bag or drug testing strips. There was urine strips that could, so if somebody had gotten drugged, you could test that, make sure.
So no, you're not looking after people's. You're not looking after people's personal prescriptions. You're just looking after medical supplies that can help if things go sideways.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, like safety. It was making it a little bit safer. You know, like if not that we had many needle users in there, but even having some of that supplies in my tent made it a little bit better, because if you have somebody that's continuously using a dirty rig, you know, like it's going to it's dull. It's going to cause infections. You know, you're putting people at risk, or like people are putting themselves at risk of like sepsis and everything. So being a little bit safer about it was was pretty important. No, we did not want to see people go through these things. I didn't want to influence drug use, but whether or not I gave this thing to them to be safer with, they were going to use either way. Same with people using crack, right? If your stem's breaking, you're putting a broken glass up to your lips. Who wants to take the chance of cutting yourself up? And there, again, was no way of stopping anybody, so being a little bit safer was best. I had things like Narcan.
Okay. Yes.
There was all kinds of stuff that I had. It wasn't even drug use. Some of it wasn't drug use supplies. At one point in time, I had HIV kits, or animal tick kits, like that tick remover.
Are you are you still actively giving back to that community, even though you are signing a lease this weekend? Because I think the conversation we had, I believe you, if someone calls you, if someone texts you, someone sends you a message, you are going to pick up the phone or get back to them as soon as possible. Yes.
Yeah. Like if somebody really needs me, I will pick up the phone. I'm pretty sure that most people know that. Some people I had to put boundaries up with. But for the rest of them, knows that I'm always going to be sitting here. There is things like I don't want to continue on with anything to do with supplies anymore and whatnot. But as a good conversation or being a good friend comes along, that's where I'm going to be there. If they need a resource, I'll probably give them a couple resources to help them out with as well, just if they're a little bit uneducated about something. But for the most part, like, I'm just there if they need to see me.
Okay.
I'm here.
Okay, good. And you'll be just in that much of a better headspace once you get into your own space, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
We are going to have multiple discussions, so I just want the audience to know this is not going to be the first time that we talk, and there's so much more to talk about. I just want to talk about just a couple more things. The difference between pallet shelters and tiny homes. I have seen both designs, and I would prefer the tiny homes. But I want you to talk about what happened when the eviction notice was served to everyone at the ball field, and how they were, told that they would be, first in line to get into one of these new facilities. How did that play out?
So with everybody being promised a pallet shelter, it started with the pallet shelters. We all thought that was great. But in the end, 2 days before everybody had to move out of that ball field, they were told that they were not qualified, leaving a lot of people scramble for a place to go at the very last minute. There was only 3 people who had gotten accepted in a pallet shelter. In my opinion, and I will tell you what happened too. One person got kicked out for smoking in his pallet. Another was accused by the community that was housed for using a needle and then throwing it on the street. I'll make that clear. That not only was that person removed, that person was one of the most soberest people I've ever met in my life, and he works. He worked with addiction services, and a lot of us didn't know about that in the ball field. So he got to watch all of us running around with wide range addictions. I feel like that should have been investigated. At least they should have checked for track marks. Like, that could have been detrimental to his job with that accusation. The other person was there for a while. He probably had something to say about security, because security was being really loud in early mornings, shining their flashlights at people's pallet shelters and keeping them awake. They shouldn't be doing that. So, when the person spoke up about it, that wasn't really liked.
Wasn't really liked by the security company?
I'm not too sure. I do know that they were kind of weird.
Well, it seems like a pretty legitimate complaint.
There was a few complaints on security. When I went to visit, so this location, specifically, I was able to go in there and visit somebody. But the security was kind of uneducated, in my opinion, and rude. Like, they didn't care about driving right in all fast in the parking lot and beaming their headlights into people's pallet shelters, which, like, you gotta be mindful. This is where people live. And people could be in the parking lot for all we know. So the pallets, only the 3 got in there. And some of the other people, some of the people at last minute got into the shelter. Some of those people were removed from the shelter. They were kicked out. One person got kicked out for defending themselves during a hate crime, just by raising a chair to somebody who had pulled a knife out. And then another person was kicked out. It was the day that everybody got put up there. One person was kicked out the day after for visiting somebody in a pod. So you had your shelter people, you had pod people, and you had pallet people. Anybody that was, this was a bit unfair, I find. So anybody that was in the shelter was not allowed to go visit the people that were in the pods or the pallets. Anybody that was in a pod was not allowed to have any of the shelter people in their place, along with the people from the pallets in their place, and any of the pallet people were not allowed to have any of them in their space. So unless it was a person coming from outside of the whole shelter property, they weren't allowed to communicate each other in their own spaces. So keeping them away from each other. So when you were taking people from in an encampment, and not many people that were up there from the encampment, but when you're taking the people left that were able to get up there, and you are making it so they are not allowed to communicate with each other, is detrimental, because we were there for each other for quite some time. So it's like, it's taking their rights away, and that wasn't okay. There was the people in the pods, God bless. I actually was offered a pod, and I turned it down. And per pod that I turned down, I had told the workers that had offered it to me that there's other people that deserve it, and I had basically given them a list. And those people that I had vouched for had gotten into the pods that I did not want.
Yeah, I've heard that story a lot. Andrew Goodsell is another individual who has been offered, and he's like, "No, there's people out here that need help more than me. Please look after them." Let's finish this conversation on this, and let's just talk about the help that is or isn't there in a private message. We know that the list of Nova Scotians waiting to get a family doctor is long. I believe that you have just secured a family doctor. What's that like, and what was the process to get to the finish line with that?
I was on this list for a really, really long time. And the same day that I was told that I could sign this lease, I was called by a doctor saying that they were willing to take me in an office, and it was a wide range of emotions. I think it was more emotional about the doctor than being housed, because I do struggle with health issues. About not being properly looked after has done nothing. I haven't been able to get many answers. I've declined with my health over the past few years. So with with that being said, that's kind of touchy. Well, touchy subjects. That was a little touchy. After having some of the experiences that I have had with my health, I'm just so thankful. I'm thankful. I know the last time I was at a doctor's, so it was like the virtual clinic or something like that over in Covered. They had told me that I had to get a referral to the asthmatic clinic, and then I had to go for spigotomy, or I can't pronounce it, I can't spell it, but basically testing on my lungs to see where the damage is and to see if I have COPD. And I delayed on getting that done. It was only recently that I was advised, get this, you need this. And I delayed on it because I was so ill. But now that I will have a doctor, I'll be able to deal with this with them and keep track of that and the care afterwards, which is going to be really great.
Yes, well, I hope that they can take care of the physical side of you. I hope you can get some referrals so that you can maybe talk to a social worker or a therapist to, get the ball rolling in that regard as well. I think what we're going to do is we're going to leave it right here. What I would like to do is the next conversation that we have, I would like to do a live show, and I would like to look at that once you move into your new place. So once you get settled in, I would love to get in front of the camera with you, and we'll just cover all the bases. We've done the sit down for the documentary that people probably won't see that in its full entirety until that documentary is released. There is a segment of you and me on my YouTube channel. We're having this conversation right now, and we'll finish the trifecta and have a live show and continue this conversation, and we'll just put it up on the YouTube channel as well. So let's leave it there. Amanda Pearce, I know you have a big weekend after a couple of years in temporary housing, bouncing around from place to place, and just the whole experience with the temporary housing and everything that goes along with that. Just really happy that you are going to be getting into your own space. You've got a doctor. Your mental health is, 7.58 out of 10. So
most days.
Most days.
Most days today, that's where it's at.
Well, I'm so glad, and it's fitting that that we're having a laugh, and just really appreciate you taking the time to join me on this Valentine's weekend, Amanda.
Oh, you're welcome.
For a few weeks, nearly 2,900 athletes walk into one arena under one sky. Different languages, different flags, different politics waiting back home. And yet, the world watches the same starting line. That's what the Olympics teach. At the Olympic Games, you see rivals help each other off the track. You see athletes who just lost the gold wrap their arms around the one who won it. You see tears, not just from victory, but from relief, sacrifice, survival. You see humanity without a filter. The games aren't naive. They don't erase conflict. They don't fix borders or budgets. But for a moment, they remind us that discipline beats division, that respect can exist without agreement, that excellence doesn't require cruelty. Nearly 2,900 stories stitched together by effort. The rest of the world could learn this. Compete fiercely, prepare relentlessly, win humbly, lose with grace, and when the race is over, shake hands anyway. Because if athletes trained to defeat each other can still choose dignity on the world's biggest stage, maybe nations can too. For Truth from the Booth, I'm Matthew. Back to your Sunday soundtrack on Canada's #1 folk station, 99.9 FM Perth Andover, and folkedupradio.com.
So this is the first day after the eviction. We still had 6 people sleeping here last night. No one's in this one. This one is coming down. But yeah, we're still trying to find places for people. Right now we're hearing that these shelters are full and there's nowhere for those people to go. We were told that if people were going to be made to leave the ball field, that they would be given options that would either be equal to or an improvement to where they were currently staying. That is not the case. We have people here who have been rejected from those options. So, what are their options? That's what we'd like to know. Today we will do our best to find a place for everyone because we know they can't stay here. But it's no easy feat. There's a lot of stuff here. We have a very small team of volunteers, and the residents themselves are focused on packing their own stuff, trying to get their own stuff out of here, salvaging what they can. I'm here with a spade today, trying to dig stuff out of the ice and snow so we can salvage what we can. It's unreal that they're being asked to move. Well, there's this much snow on the ground. I don't understand how the government thinks this is a great idea. A lot of stuff is going to be left behind, not because they didn't want it, but because they just couldn't access it. So here we are. This sucks, guys. This really sucks.